if you were going to start all over, like knowing what you know now, would you immediately have jumped right into Airbnb? What markets are you actually looking to invest in right now?
Currently in Atlanta, so Metro Atlanta area.
The best,
Yeah.
the absolute best. If I could live anywhere, so I love Atlanta so much. I had somebody paint this painting of Outcast.
I want that.
Oh my gosh, if you saw how detailed and how gorgeous this painting is, because I've got my camera set up to make it creamy. You know how that all works. But I was in Little Five Points and I saw that big mural in downtown Atlanta of Outcast, but it's swapped. And I'm like, I have to have somebody paint this for me. It's the most amazing thing. And the fact that that guy did that massive mural is like 100 feet wide, 50 feet tall is like, oh my gosh. So Atlanta is where I'm focusing most of my Airbnbs. I'm launching 2 Airbnbs there today,
Oh,
actually.
nice. Yeah,
But I'm hearing a lot about Atlanta is that they're trying to crack down on Airbnbs.
they
Have you been
are.
hearing anything about that?
Yeah, it's an ordinance coming out pretty soon that if you have an Airbnb or short term rental in the city of Atlanta, so that's why I say I do Metro Atlanta, but
Mm.
I'm sure it's going to spread to the other locales as well.
So like Decatur would be okay.
Yeah, exactly. For
Okay,
now,
so like I'd be okay in Decatur, but what about so I have one in what is it? Ansley Park, which is like downtown Atlanta. Would I be in trouble in Ansley Park?
yeah, so not in trouble. It's not anything bad per se. It's just that you're going to need a permit. You're going to need a business license. There's a lot of different regulations they're cracking down in that way.
I have no problem with that. I think that's the big challenge with a lot of people. Like even in wholesale, they're talking about like, oh, well, I got to get a license to wholesale. I'm like,
License and yeah,
just get a license,
yeah.
right?
If that's what it takes to do it, just do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Which is so funny because people will go like pay for a mentorship. They'll watch like 1,000 hours of YouTube. They'll read books, go to seminars, which I completely think they should. But
yeah.
when it comes down to getting a license, it's like, that's where you draw the line in the sand. Just go get the license. Right. So if you were going to start all over, like knowing what you know now, would you immediately have jumped right into Airbnb?
um, I will answer that question because that's a great question. But backtrack a little bit too about what they're cracking down on in Atlanta.
Mm.
I know that I had to read it a little bit more thoroughly. I think they're limiting. That's what it is. I think they're limiting the number that you can have in the city of Atlanta. And I personally had my personal residence. I do Airbnb out of, so that's like an okay, like that checks off. Like okay, you're good. But if it's a property that you don't live in whatsoever and it's solely for Airbnb, then I think that's when they limit the number that you can have. Um,
So it's not that they're limiting how many people can do it. It's that they're limiting you as an individual, how many you can own individually.
in the city of Atlanta, correct? Yep.
That's great because I bought this property in Atlanta, right in Ansley Park, like unbelievable, gorgeous. I think we paid like 1.2 million for it. It was all on seller finance. Seller gave us 3% interest, so my payment with the seller is like $3,800, and I bring in 21 grand a month on that Airbnb. It's a good one. So we end up netting like somewhere around 11 grand after management fees, vacancies, furniture repairs, all the things.
Yeah.
And we end up making about 11 grand in our pocket every month. So then like 4 months after we buy this property, somebody goes, "Hey, just so you know, Atlanta is going to crack down on all these Airbnbs." I'm like, "No, I just bought this property." But
Yeah.
that's good. I'm glad to hear that. I'll have to communicate with you as you hear more because your ear is a lot closer to the ground over there than mine is.
Yeah, definitely. So back to your question about
Yes.
knowing what I know now, from day one, would I have jumped right into Airbnb?
And now here's the thing is the context in which I'm asking this is that you have all these people in your audience that are watching your YouTube channel, watching your social media because they are looking to be inspired or get some education about how do I get to her situation, right? So if you're speaking to your audience, I guess we got to look at it in that context as well, which means does your audience have the money, the wherewithal,
Right.
the
Resources.
resources to start it in an Airbnb, or is that something you've kind of got to grow into?
Mm,
So answer it with that thought process.
okay. So I think that just to compare starting point. So Airbnb, I do not believe is something you can do alone.
Mm.
So speaking of resources, if you have at least one other person who you can work with, then yes, I think it's a great starting point. Um, I personally don't own any of my Airbnb. So I know you just said you did 1.2 million seller financing, and I'm sure you killed it with the negotiating on that deal, but none of mine I own. I do what's called the rental arbitrage.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to landlords and I'm saying, hey, how would you like to have a forever tenant where we take absolute pristine care of your property and we're not going anywhere so long as you don't kick us out and things like that. So I do the rental arbitrage method. So knowing that and expressing that to the viewers who want to find their foot into real estate, that I think is the lowest barrier of entry, because that's not a lot out of pocket. If you have to buy a house, you have to put a down payment, XYZ. This is just saying, hey, I'm going to pay you security deposit and first month's rent up front. I've even negotiated several times where I hold off on paying you. Like, let me move in early, or let me have it rent free for a month or so I can furnish a place, get it up and running. And then once we start making money, here's your rent.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways to work that out to where it is easier on the pockets. And although rent is crazy in Atlanta now, I do think that there's a market for everyone. You can have a 1-bedroom starting out. My largest is a 5-bedroom house.
Nice.
But, so yeah, I think that is a easy way to get in, because as far as cost goes, depending, like I said, the size, you don't have to furnish a 5-bedroom house right out the bat. Like it's obviously cheaper to furnish a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom than it would be a 5. I personally go, I don't want to say dumpster diving, but I'm faithfully
You
on.
can say that. I like it.
I am faithfully on Facebook Marketplace and offer up like it is my full-time job to find everything. And I mean everything. So yeah, that's another way to save on costs. What I am doing now currently, I'm doing like 2-in-1. So I'm not sure if you've heard of Peerspace.
Huh?
Yeah, so I have homes, obviously, that I put up for people to sleep in and lodge in, but those same homes are nice enough. We're in Atlanta. There's filming, like we're the Hollywood of the South. So
Oh,
there's
for real. It's crazy over there.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I have pretty nice houses that look like they can be like a movie set or like a TV set or whatever the case is, somebody's cute living room or whatever. So I put it up on Peerspace and I got bookings now for that. So there's so many ways to skin a cat when it comes to like furnished properties, short-term rentals, Airbnb, whatever you want to call it. So I think that would be an ideal way for somebody to get into real estate.
I love that. So the most challenging thing, I think, for somebody that's trying to get into real estate, it's always the same thing in my mind. It's always the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever talks about it, but it's true. It is the fact that there are so many ways to succeed in this business, that if I'm a brand new person, I'm like, hey, because I'm sure in your Instagram DMs and your YouTube comments, people are like, how do I get started?
Yeah, all
Like,
the time.
tell me what step by step by step. Tell me the step by step, right? And we should, right? As people who know how to get into the game. The problem is, like, your strategy is brilliant, but I've never used it. And so there is no cookie cutter way to get into this business. It all comes down to your own desire, your own, what are you passionate about? What do you think would be fun? And also your resources of what you have in your pocket. So if you have no money in your pocket, I love your idea because it is low cash. So what you could do, you could squat up with somebody, whether that's a private investor. That scares a lot of people when you say private investors. Most new person goes, no, private investor? I don't know any private investor. So scratch the private investor. Maybe it's a friend of yours from work. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's somebody you know, that you find the tenant, or I'm sorry, not the tenant. You find the landlord that's like, yes, I want exactly what you said, a permanent tenant. And yes, I want you to take care of my property. That you bring the deal to the table, and then you bring somebody that brings in, sounds like you could probably get a pretty kick-ass Airbnb arbitrage situation going on for probably anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 with first month's security deposit, utilities, and a whole house full of furniture. Does that sound like a pretty appropriate number?
Definitely. Yes.
So that's what, when you say don't do it by yourself, that's what you mean. Like, go find a landlord that's going to let you arbitrage their house.
Mm-hmm.
And then go find somebody that maybe has some money if you're low on money, and just go do the deal where all three people are kind of involved in it.
Yeah. And also, the fact that it's customer service, it's hospitality. There's going to be a trillion inquiries and things like that. So that's another reason I say don't do it by yourself, because you're not a robot and you're not awake 24/7. So who's going to answer those messages? Who's going to, when they lock themselves out at 3 a.m.,
Which they do.
all the time, all the time. So yeah, that's why I say don't do it alone at all whatsoever.
Right, because there's so many things like, oh my gosh, hot water heater just burst. What do I do? Middle of the night, because the landlord, you don't want to call the landlord. Like you got a operating business in there. Now, question I have with the arbitrage, because I don't do arbitrage. I love the method. I think it's brilliant, especially for somebody that's getting started. But here's my question. Do you find it challenging, or do you find it really easy to find these types of landlords?
I would say I've probably had about a 50-50, like yeses versus nos. And it kind of just reminds me of real estate. I mean, not real estate, but wholesaling, cold calling, direct mail. You're going to get a lot of yeses or a lot of nos, and then not too many yeses. The thing about the landlords is that a lot of them are very confused. A lot of them, I don't know if they think scam or whatever they think initially, but at the end of the day, you have to think like a landlord. What is the most important thing to you? You don't want a vacant property. You want rent on time each and every month. And you want a hassle-free experience with whoever
Low maintenance.
Low maintenance, right?
I want a tenant to live in my house for 10 years and never call me once.
No, I don't want to hear from you at all whatsoever.
In fact, I would prefer not to raise my rent as long as I never get a freaking call from you.
Right. Yes. And it's so funny. I recently ran into a guy. So the situation where there's an Airbnb host who is getting out of, I don't know, the business or this particular home. So the Airbnb host was giving me his property, his listing, but he was rental arbitraging that. So there's a lot of parties. So now it's the host and the landlord. So the landlord literally was like, I don't want to hear about, if it's like something small, like the water's leak, like something small, like fix it yourself.
Right.
If it's something structural, then you reach out to me. Kind of like with any like traditional landlord tenant situation. But that's pretty much what it is. You just pitch to them that this is what I'm offering to you. And then I guess if you're new, the biggest question is like, well, I can't prove that, or I don't have a portfolio, or I don't really know, like that's a lot of new people's fear, is all the obstacles that they will face. Like, what if they tell me no because I can't prove that I've done this before, or I can't prove that I have experience or the money to pay them if for whatever reason my property doesn't get booked for an entire month or whatever the case is.
So I have I have a solution to that for anybody that's paying attention, but I don't know if it goes against maybe some of the stuff that you teach people, but I have a gentleman who manages my Airbnbs for me, because I'm like, I want to be full hands off.
Yeah.
Do you do Airbnb management?
Do I?
Yeah.
I don't, like for other people. I've had like literally one person the other day reach out to me to want to co-host, and that's something I'd be open to.
Love it. Okay. So if I'm brand new and I'm like, yo, I can bring a landlord to the table. I might even have a partner, but I need somebody who helps me co-host and understand how to list my property and how to get people enticed and how to get 5-star reviews and how to automate some of the things behind the scenes. You would be open to co-hosting.
Yes.
Love it. Okay, cool. So what I do for my Airbnbs is I have a gentleman named Noah Hoffman. Okay. I buy all my Airbnbs. So what we'll do, like I just bought one on the beach in West Palm. And so it's a seller that's selling to me on seller finance. My main goal used to be cash flow. It used to be cash flow when I was first kind of starting out. Like, how do I replace my income? How do I never worry about money?
Yeah.
But I'm now at a point where my main objective every single day is, how do I lower my tax burden because of all the money we make on fix and flips and all the money we make on other things? How do I make it so I have a zero tax basis? And the only way that I've been able to accomplish that is by buying properties and utilizing depreciation, which, the IRS allows me to wipe out my other income with my depreciation.
Right, right.
So like that $1 million property I bought in December of 2020, last year, gave me a $400,000 tax write-off with that one purchase in my first year. So I could go make $400,000 in my wholesale business tax-free because I got a $400,000 write-off with my Airbnb. So for me, I do buy everything, but I don't want to manage anything. And so I have a guy, Airbnb management, and he flies in, he dumpster dives as you state. He finds all the stuff, sets up the house, gets it on his Airbnb. So I've never been into my own Airbnb account. Like that's how low maintenance I am. The tenants reach out to him. The reviews are on his shoulders. The money collection's on his shoulder. He takes all the utilities, the HOA, the, maintenance and management and all that kind of stuff off the top, takes his fee, and then literally deposits the rest into my account.
Okay.
So what's cool about that is if there's anybody that's brand new and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to get started, but I don't know the first thing. Do you teach people how to manage this, or what are you teaching? Is there anything you're doing in terms of like actual education system with Airbnb?
With Airbnb specifically, no. I do have an online course and coaching group for wholesaling. But just as I mentioned when we first got started talking, if I want to pivot what I'm teaching on my YouTube channel to be about Airbnb, then I should consider, packaging it up and making it a course or whatever the case may be to teach people. Because I am currently getting a lot of questions about Airbnb now specifically.
Everybody wants it. And then what
Yeah.
the owner of Airbnb just came out with an announcement, like, or not an announcement, but he came out with this open letter to the public. Like, we are seeing a
Or
tremendous demand for this. And I think everybody's aware of that. Plus, if I'm going and I do, so let me tell you my average rental right now, my average single family rental will net me after I make my mortgage payment. Cause I buy everything subject to or on seller finance, everything. I have not gotten a loan in over 7 years. So everything I bought is sub to or seller finance. After I make the payment, maintenance, utilities, everything, everything. My average net is about $500 per month. That's my average. There's some I make 1,000. There's some I make 2,000. But my average Airbnb net is like $4,000 on one property, very similar to the same type of property as the rental I'm making $500 on. And so it just doesn't make sense for me personally to do single family rentals anymore. Like Airbnb crushes, right?
definitely. And I think especially for you in your case where you're completely hands free, so you're more willing to share the wealth with somebody else. So I don't know the percentage breakup between you and Noah, but
It's unfair for him, to be honest. I help him kind of promote his business, and so he gives me a discount. But I think most people are what, like 20 to 25%.
management and co-host, yeah, around there, yeah.
Yeah, I pay him. I'm embarrassed to say this because it's really low, but I pay him 10% of my gross.
And then you get 90.
90%. Yeah. Well, so what he'll do is, let's say like the one in Atlanta, the one in Ansley Park brings in 21 grand right now on average. So he takes $2,100, which is a lot of money for a management on one property, but obviously that's one. He's got one for me in Vegas as well. That's like, I bring in $4,200 a month. So he only makes $420 on that one property per month. So at the end of the day, it is kind of lower on the Vegas one. So he takes his money right off the top, and then he pays the utilities, he pays the HOA, he pays any maintenance. If he had to call a handyman or he had to order an extra piece of furniture or something like that, he takes that off the top, and then everything else goes to me. So I don't even have to deal with the accounting as far as like utilities and maintenance and HOA and all that kind of stuff goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of lucky. And I think that not everybody's going to have somebody like a Noah Hoffman in their back pocket. So here's another question I have about landlords. I have a landlord. Okay. You and I are going out and we're partners, and we find a landlord that's like, yes, I want to do this with you, but it's not going to be a traditional rental. This is going to be you basically operating a business inside of my house. I, as the landlord, demand more money for my rental than if it was a straight up rental. Is that what is going on? Are these landlords typically getting paid more than they would if they just rented it to somebody regular Joe off the street?
I mean, I've definitely heard some people offering more to landlords. I've never had a situation where a landlord was like, well, I know you're going to be making a lot of money running a business, so I want more from you. I haven't had that situation. Because I've even tried to go and negotiate a rate lower, but they kind of just stick at market rent and they wouldn't go lower just simply because they know we're running a business. But I've never had anybody want more. But
So it sounds like the big benefit for them that's coming from you, like all the things you're bringing to the table, you've addressed these earlier in the conversation.
Yeah.
1, no headache.
Yep.
2, you're going to pay on time. 3, you're keeping the property cleaned, maintained, and like show ready all the time. Whereas a tenant, it has all this deferred maintenance that just gets worse and worse over time. That's probably enough for them to be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
For them, that's probably a dream come true, right?
So it's not even like they're counting my pockets. They're not like, well, I'm going to go up $300 more or whatever on the rent because of what you're doing. They're, everybody thinks what's in it for me. So that's what they're hearing. They're seeing the pretty picture that's being painted. They're picturing their life of ease and no headache. So that's what is a selling point. That's what really gets them.
Love it. Okay. So you and I go do a deal, right? We find a landlord, we do a deal. We're making, our investments, let's say $5,000, right? A month of rent, some security, couple $1,000s of some dumpster diving furniture, which is great. It's actually impressive, like what kind of stuff I'm sure you can find.
Yes.
It starts renting out. We're making, let's say $1,000 a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
That goes on for 12 months. And then that landlord says, I'm done. I just want to sell the property. Is that happening a lot? Or are you trying to do like 2-year agreements, 3-year agreements so you can stretch that $1,000 out as much as you possibly can?
I really always, when I'm first reaching out to somebody and we're first going into an agreement, I always do 1 year. And I tell them simply because I'm testing you out, you're testing me out. I don't want to be locked in for 2 years and this place ends up being like a murder scene, like a crime scene. And I just didn't know. So after the first year, we then renew for longer. And I actually have had one landlord who wanted to sell the place, but he wanted to sell it to us. So, yeah. And I mean, word of mouth spreads like wildfire with him. So I think we hit a home run with him. He loves us and vice versa. So he's giving all types of referrals as far as other landlords that he knows that have rentals. And he's like, don't even worry about putting it on the market. Like, I've got people for you, So other than that, I haven't had a situation where a landlord wanted to sell it and like swipe me out of the business or out of the deal or whatever the case may be.
Love it. So are you doing direct to seller marketing right now in a wholesale operation? Or are you primarily now going for Airbnb arbitrage?
Yeah, I'm primarily going for Airbnb arbitrage. And I know you mentioned like single family rentals are like, what's the point? But I still do have traditional rentals. And
so do I. I just wish I didn't.
Not single family, at least. Single family is like, what's the point? But so yeah, I am just primarily doing buy and hold any type of way where there's a long-term rental or a short-term rental is what I'm looking for.
Got it. Okay. So there was a point where you were primarily going direct to seller marketing for a wholesale operation. You then saw the light in terms of wholesale is amazing and it's a great way to get into the game. And it's absolutely a huge way to get into real estate, but you're all about that cash flow right now.
Right. Yes.
And Airbnb is where you're focusing Atlanta proper, obviously Atlanta Metro, all Airbnb.
Yeah.
Tons of jobs are moving in. You guys truly are Hollywood of the South. I've never heard anybody say that, by the way.
Oh yeah, look it up. It's definitely ATL Wood is what some people say too.
I've never heard that. So I go to Atlanta a couple times a year. I absolutely love it. And I know Tyler Perry has like this massive studio. He retrofitted an army base or something.
Yep. And I have some properties right around that area, literally right by Tyler Perry Studios.
Amazing. So you would say that Atlanta is like a really safe place to go and do Airbnb arbitrage.
Yes.
Okay. So next question. How do I find these landlords? How do I find these deals? If I'm just starting out, how do I find these deals?
So you could definitely search, apartments.com, Zillow, Redfin for homes that are for rent. One of the best places that I like to go is gosection8.com because what I found is that on Zillow and the rest, of course, obviously like the MLS, you can't really sift through property managers and actual homeowners, rent buy owners. Whereas on gosection8.com, that's primarily like 99%, homeowners who are putting their property up on the Section 8 website.
Amazing. So I go to Section 8, I go to gosection8.com. I'm looking for landlords. And typically it's 99% of the people posting on there are the landlord themselves, not a property management company. So I know I'm going to get directly in touch with that landlord.
Yep. And
What's my opening line?
That's a good
What's
question.
one of 400 we could come up with? What's one that you would come up with off the top of your head?
It's funny. I have a video on my channel about like me actually cold calling all these people.
Hell yeah, you do.
Yeah. um, obviously you say, hey, I see you have this property that's available for rent. I'm actually interested. I may go about it a couple of different ways. If I don't want to play like big shot, like I'm a company or business, I always go like the familial route. It's me and my mom, and we're looking for a place that we can just, use as a corporate lease. We've had experience doing this several times over. I can definitely share some references with you. But that's a mouthful, and you don't want to say too much in the opening line. So the opening line would be, hi, I see you have this property that's available for rent. I'm interested. It's me and my mom, and I work for a real estate investing company, and we specialize in corporate leases. And then a lot of times that's going to be like, what? What does that mean? But when they hear you say what you work for, they're thinking like, oh, you're trying to tell me that you have income, like you tell me that you have a job. So yes, you are qualified to be a tenant.
So you're saying that the landlord basically is already pre-programmed to expect a certain type of person to be calling them, and they're going to have these trigger points and these things that get them excited in the conversation. So what you're telling them is, I work for a company, and what they hear is, oh, this person has verifiable income.
Right. Yes.
And they're still thinking of you as like a traditional rental, maybe at that point.
If I say me and my mom, okay, it's only two people. It's not, yeah. So these things are in their head is like, okay, not too many people. Do you have income? You sound nice. But then, of course, there's going to be questions when you say something like corporate leasing.
Right. So you stop right there. You let them absorb that, and they might say, wait, what? What'd you say? Corporate leasing? What does that mean? And then what's the line?
What does that mean? So basically what that means is that we would use your property not to live in, but to house people who are professionals, such as travel nurses or film industry individuals. So I list certain things like that. So that is not like, well, one, it's not like a party house. That's not what I'm going to do here. And then we do sometimes host travel nurses who are more steady because they want to hear that it's not just people in and out. And that's a huge objection that I always get. Well, I don't want just anybody in my property, or I wouldn't be able to screen the people that you have coming in my property.
Right. They might feel like they're losing control, right?
Right.
And that depends on the personality, right? So anybody that's listening to this right now that's like, oh my gosh, they're going to ask these questions of me. 90% of the people probably won't, but 10% of the people that do is just a personality thing for them, is that they're just a control, oriented type of person. So they might say, well, I don't know. I'm not about that because I don't know who all these people are coming in and out of the house. At that point, you would switch over to, well, we actually work with staffing agencies or maybe traveling nurse companies where these are people traveling to work at a hospital for 2-3 months at a time.
They're already background checked,
Love it.
Yep.
Love it. So if that is the situation, let's say I have a super analytical seller and the seller's like, well, yeah, I like this, but at the end of the day, I don't know these people. And you then decide to switch the conversation over to a traveling nurse type of home. Mm-hmm. How are you guys going about finding these traveling nurses?
There's lots of resources. Facebook groups are a huge resource, but from there's one, I think it might be the largest agency for travel nurses or platform that they use called Furnished Finder. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's for travel nurses to find furnished homes all throughout the country.
Love it. So we're currently filming a TV show right now for A&E.
So I've heard. Congratulations.
Yeah, pretty cool. So what's funny is like they had to hire 35 people to come and run that show, right? Uh-huh. It's interesting. I didn't know this about the industry, but it must be 10 times, 100 times more than this in Atlanta. But what A&E does is they go, okay, we're going to pay your per diem daily to stay in a house, but you have to go find your own house. And so these people go on Furnished Finder to go find their own house that's already like furnished and ready to go. And then A&E pays their per diem and lets them choose their own housing. Is that what happens in rentals for nurses?
So nurses are given a stipend, a housing stipend for X amount of money. And they could go one of two ways. They could use the staffing agency to say, okay, you're allotting me, I don't know, $2,500 a month for a place to stay. You go find me a place. But a lot of nurses don't do that because they're smart. So they're like, if you're allotting me $2,500 a month, let me go find the place. They'll probably find a place for 2,000 or so. And
And
they
they pocket the $500.
right.
Genius.
Yeah.
Genius, genius. So then what you'll do is that if you have an overly analytical seller, you'll tell the seller, no problem. I'll work with we have a lot of traveling nurses. They've been vetted. They've been background checked. They're obviously working in hospitals. We will dedicate your home to a traveling nurse type of situation.
Yes.
Can you make the same amount of money on a traveling nurse situation as you can on a vacation rental?
No, not necessarily. Because what I found, and no shade to them, but travel nurses don't want to spend too much. They don't want to spend a lot.
Because they're trying to pocket that extra money, right?
Exactly. They're trying to pocket that extra money. A lot of them already have homes wherever they're truly based. So a lot of them complain about 2 mortgages or 2 rents or whatever the case may be. And that is very understandable. I completely understand that and get that. So I think you can make a lot more with just, travelers, vacationers. There's a trillion reasons why people travel and need an Airbnb. I've had people where their house burned down or flooded, and so they're local, but they need a place in the interim temporarily to stay. So I've had people stay, months at a time for certain reasons like that.
Okay, so this is really interesting because I've probably interviewed, I don't know, let's throw a number out there, a couple hundred people.
Mm-hmm.
And the question for me always is the same thing. What would this person who has experience do if you place them in the middle of nowhere, America? I'm not going to drop you in like the Sahara Desert or something. We're going to drop you in the middle of somewhere, America, anywhere. And you have to start a real estate journey from scratch, right? You have a place to live. You have a little bit of money in your pocket for food. But outside of that, you have no other resource.
Yeah.
What would you do to get started? And it sounds like, and I love this idea because you're the first person out of hundreds of people that I've interviewed that this is the answer. You would find a tired landlord and you would do a vacation arbitrage and bring in a partner to cover the cost.
Yep. Yep.
I really don't need to have that much experience except for the line that you gave me. I need to create a bunch of conversations and get that ball rolling. How do I know? Let's say that I find a property on, gosection8.com,
Mm-hmm.
and that property is like $2,500 a month in rent. So that's kind of a higher and nicer rental. How do I know that's going to make money on an Airbnb? Is there a website I can check, or do I need to call or go on your YouTube channel? How does that work?
There's a few websites and resources that you can use. Airbnb may be your best bet. So going on Airbnb itself as a traveler and then looking in that specific area, you can see what people are charging, nightly. So you can kind of gauge what you can charge or what you could potentially make. And you can, go as far as looking at their calendars just to see their availability, because somebody, up the street could be charging $300 a night, but you check their calendar and it's wide open. So that kind of tells you, okay, well, they're not getting booked.
So you're essentially reverse engineering it, right? You're going in there and that doesn't cost any money. And so I'm going to guess, because you're starting with a free resource right now.
Right. Yes.
You're going to tell me that there's other websites, but they cost some money.
Yes.
Okay. And what's interesting is the more you talk to people and the more you create YouTube content and the more you care about educating brand new people, the more you realize also the first thought everybody has is, well, how much does that cost me?
Yep.
Okay. So I can go on Airbnb. I can reverse engineer this, but where else can I go?
There's another very popular website called AirDNA. AirDNA.co.
I've been on that one. That one does cost money, and I've gotten a 43-page report on one property that's like, here's everything you need to know about everything on this house. Do you feel like that's worth the money to spend?
Yes, I would say, because there are other competitors to AirDNA, and a lot of people say that is not the most accurate information, where that might be true, but it's a great starting point.
Right.
It's a great way to just get an idea of what the pulse is in this area. Is it possible to make money in rural, I don't know, Kansas City? I don't know. But yeah, so
right.
AirDNA is a great resource for getting that information.
So for my experience with AirDNA, the only thing I do, so here's what happens in my process. So I'll get somebody that sends me a deal, right? It's a seller finance or subject to deal, like the one in West Palm Beach that I'm buying. It's a duplex. So I'm going to Airbnb both sides, which is cool.
Nice.
All I do is I go to Noah, the guy that manages my stuff, and I go, hey man, send me an Airbnb Air DNA report. And I could just go run the report myself, but I don't want to. I kind of want somebody else to have their eyes on it so that I don't make the mistake. So he runs through, he goes through the thing, and he always says the same thing you just said. He says Air DNA is not the greatest information, but it is the best starting point. So he gets that report. He sees kind of the middle of the road of what other people are renting it out for, what the vacancy timeframes are, what that kind of stuff. And then I go back and reverse engineer with the seller, where let's say the seller goes, well, I'll sell this to you. I think we're buying that one for 1.5. So seller goes, I'll sell it to you for 1.5. I want X amount of money down and I'll finance the rest to you at 2% interest, which is what we worked out.
Mm-hmm.
I then come up with that payment with the seller. Let's say it's $6,000. Well, damn, I better be making $15,000 to $20,000 on that Airbnb before I make the decision to buy that deal. So for you, if you're doing Airbnb arbitrage, are you going and then kind of calculating from an AirDNA report what your rent rate's going to be, and then you start reverse engineering?
Yes.
What does that look like? What is there a percentage of, like, let's say my rent is $1,500. Where do I need to be on my AirDNA number to make, let's say, take home $1,000?
So yeah, I would pull out my calculator right now and do the math. So
yes, do it.
I always use 21 days out of the month as my as being conservative. So meaning that 21 days out of the month is what I would expect to be occupied.
Love it.
Days would be vacant.
Do you see anybody ever make the mistake to be like, oh, well, I'm $300 a night and 30 days in a month, that's $9,000 a month?
Yeah, all the time. So 21 days is pretty much, I want to say, industry standard. Most people who are hosting will tell you that that's kind of what they go off of. If you want to be really conservative, you'll go less. But I would never go more than 21 days. So you said if you want to make $1,000 a month net.
Yeah, I want to take home $1,000 a month comfortably. Like, I know that in 6 months, I'm not going to have some weird thing pop up that all the $6,000 I just made goes out the drain. Let's figure that out. What would that be? Would you throw in another $500, or you throw in another $1,000? What would you put in there as like a buffer? Would you go, look, I need to rent this thing out for, I need to bring in $3,500 a month to pay the $1,500 to the landlord. That leaves me $2,000. The other $1,000 goes for utilities, HOA, maybe some miscellaneous expenses, and then I can take home $1,000 a month. Is that kind of how the math works?
Yes. So yes, you want to subtract all the expenses that you can think of, as accurately as possible, and then you reverse engineer it that way, using 21 days as
a gauge.
Yes. As a gauge.
So if I need to be at $3,500 a month in income, that means I need to figure out, can I rent this thing out? So what we need to do is take 3,500 and divide it by 21. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So what's that nightly rate?
So you said 3,500 divided by 21, $166.66.
Got it. So I need to take my AirDNA report and go, okay, this house in this area, can it justify a $166 per night rate? And then the way you're saying it is conservatively, I can go and say, I'm only going to get 21 days out of 30. So at 166, I'm only going to bring in a total of $3,500, take out all those expenses, even some buffer, a couple $100 of buffer. I'm taking home $1,000 a month.
Right. Is
that pretty good expectation to have? Is $1,000 a month on each Airbnb, or is that pretty high?
No, that's very reasonable. I feel like that's kind of like starting line.
So all I would have to do, if I'm somebody that is trying to quit my job and I'm making $5,000 a month take home, all I have to do is go get 5 of these deals and I'm done working. I can tell my boss to suck it and I can quit.
I wouldn't say all that, but yes.
I mean, you wouldn't say suck it, but in your mind, you say, I'm out. See ya. Done. That's all it would take is 5 deals.
Yeah.
I love that. Here's what I love about that.
Yes.
In 5 wholesale deals, nobody's ever quit their job.
Which is true. You want to know why? Because you're always chasing the next check.
We call it the wholesale hamster wheel. You're always on that hamster wheel. It's so hard to get off. You're redeploying your money. You're redeploying your marketing expense. One month you crush it. The next month you're like, where's my leads? And it's this constant thing. You go get 5 of these deals like this, you're done.
Yep.
Okay, so I don't teach this at all. Okay, what I do is I teach creative finance and how to acquire these properties, right? Which requires some really good negotiating. It requires a lot of information and understanding of subject to and seller finance, all that kind of stuff. Guys, if you're watching this on her YouTube channel, by the way, and you haven't subscribed, you're an idiot. Subscribe to her YouTube channel.
Yes, make sure you subscribe to Pace, because I know you keep mentioning creative financing, and I'm sure people watching it have no clue. So that's why you need to go watch his videos. Literally go watch all his videos.
If, whatever. I just send me deals. Just send me all your dead leads. I will do. You don't need to learn creative finance. Just learn to send me your dead leads. That's all I want.
You're like, I'll take it from there.
Yeah, I'll take it from there. But I'm super excited.
Yeah.
About doing a Zoom with you. You're amazing.
You are amazing. I'm so excited that we got to be face to face. I have a friend who like swears by you and introduced me to your channel. And then from there, I was like, there's so much that I don't know.
Don't even worry about it. Well, let's hang out. Let's do some deals together. Next time I'm in Atlanta, we always have like a big get together.
Let's do it.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.